Welcome to Opt to Thrive, your go-to podcast for women's wellness in midlife, designed to educate, support, and inspire you to live your very best life. And now your host, Dr. Corina Sims.
Hello, and welcome to my very first episode of Opt to Thrive. I'm your host, Dr. Corina Sims. Thank you so much for joining me today on my very first episode. I'll share a little secret. This is my third recording of this episode. And I'll tell you why. Because I think that it's a really important episode to get right. I got to get this one right. You're here listening to me and deciding if you want to come back and have a listen. I really want to put my best foot forward, hopefully entice you to come back and have a listen because I really believe I have so much to offer you. And it wouldn't be worth doing a podcast if no one listens. So I've put a lot of thought into the scene I want to set. I know what I don't want. I don't want to have a dry, medical speak, boring podcast. I want it to be fun and interesting and relatable and motivating and inspirational, all those things. I want it to feel like you're right here with me in my little sunroom at the back of our old farmhouse, having a cuppa, listening to the birds. You might hear a few from time to time. And having a really great chat about things that matter. My first two recordings were a bit boring, the first one, and the second one was a bit sterile. I'm hoping if you're listening to this means number 3 has been the best one. So I thought I'd start by sharing my intentions for this podcast with you. They're twofold. First, I want to break down the medical jargon, sift through the mountains of information out there, interpret it into language that is understandable and relatable, so you can have accurate information in a way that you really get it. I want you to be able to go away and make informed decisions about your health, having accurate information. But just as important to me is sharing with you the tools I've learned in my 53 years of living. Man, what a 53 years I have lived. My journey has been one of monumental growth and learning. I have learned so many tools and strategies that I want to share with you as a way of giving back to all the people and the universe for all the stepping stones, the life preservers, protectors, and mentors I've been so incredibly fortunate and am so incredibly grateful to have had along the way. So I need some credibility. Now, I think that you'd agree with me, having a medical degree does give me some credibility. But I don't want to just be here interpreting medical knowledge that I've learned. That is important. And that's, as I said, half of what I want to do. But the other half is really near and dear to my heart. And so I've made a decision to share a little bit of my background with you. It really isn't the typical story one might think I would have. And I think it's a bit interesting. I've thought long and hard about this, and I hadn't actually planned on bringing it into this project. But then I realized, how can I not? It's who I am. It's the foundation of what I have to offer. And if nothing else, it's an interesting story. But I really think it's a powerful illustration of the amazing tools I've learned in my life and tools I want to share with you. Tools in managing your mind and getting you to where you want to go in your life, to live your best life. Those are just as important to me as the medical side of things. Now, really important to do the responsible thing here and add a little disclaimer. I really don't want there to be any misunderstandings here. The information I give here and in all of my podcasts is in no way a substitute for seeing your own doctor, especially if you suffer from any type of mental illness. These tools can be helpful and they can be a helpful addition to the treatment that you're receiving, but they're in no way a substitute. It is imperative that you have a relationship with your own doctor to manage your health. So I'm just going to give a quick little synopsis of where I started to where I am now. As I said, I'm hoping that my story can give a bit of credibility to the tools and the strategies that I want to teach. So I was the first of 2 children born to a teenage mother. My brother was born the day before my first birthday, and we were both high on amphetamines. My mom struggled with drug addiction from her teenage years until she died at 38 as a result of a heroin addiction. My dad was a chronic alcoholic, unfortunately ended his life when he was 48. Both of my sides of my family were rife with drug and alcohol addiction, mental illness, and domestic violence. I grew up shifting between each parent, depending on who was well enough at the time. There were a few foster homes briefly, and then luckily I had a set of grandparents that often stepped in and helped out. I went to 9 different schools in 4 different states. I was the first in several generations of my family to graduate from high school. I didn't think that I could go to university. That wasn't even on my radar. Graduating from high school to me was the pinnacle. You had made it if you got through high school. I thought that only people who had a lot of money or were at the top of their class got to go to university. I had a lot of report cards that would say if I would just apply myself, I had a lot of potential. But unfortunately, I didn't have anyone to reinforce that message at home. I did have a grandpa who caught me pretending to be a secretary when I was about 7 years old. I was typing away on a little pretend typewriter that I had made out of a book. So resourcefulness, that is definitely one of the things I've learned along the way. He told me that I should be the lawyer, not the secretary. He told me that I could be anything that I wanted to be. If I wanted to be the very first female president of the United States of America, I could do that. So that seed was there from a young age. Unfortunately, not a lot of reinforcement of the message as I was growing up. So graduation from high school, as I said, was the pinnacle. I had arrived. I was there. I had made it. It wasn't until the age of 26 that I decided I wanted to study medicine. And you can imagine between high school and 26, there had to be a lot of growth, a lot of self-development, a lot of discovery. I mean, I had no idea even how to go to university. So in this time, I developed a yearning for education. I managed to work out how to enroll and study at a local junior college. Lucky for me, financial aid wasn't a problem, given my family history, because they went on the income that your parents made. I quickly realized those teachers were right all along. If I did apply myself, I did have great potential, and I started to believe in myself and in my potential. The world opened up to me. I had no idea what I wanted to do, but I felt like I could literally pick anything. In my mid-20s, I took a job working for the American Red Cross, and I was trained to teach CPR and first aid, and I very quickly knew I had a passion for the human body and for helping people. That entire chapter was ran by women, amazing, kind, giving, capable women. My boss, Corey Reel, a little shout out to Corey, was a volunteer who at 40 years old was made redundant from a job she'd been working at for 20 years. And after watching her briefly kind of fall apart, I also watched her pick herself up and put herself through a nursing degree. And I have no doubt is an incredible nurse. That modeling, I think, was pivotal for me to believe that at any stage, it wasn't too late. And this is probably where my very first true mentor came into the picture. The chapter manager was one of the most amazing women I had ever met to that point in my life, and still is. Strong, independent, capable, ambitious, driven. Her name was Pam Leeser, another little shout out. She taught me the 5 principles to live by: commitment, accountability, responsibility, integrity, and self-respect. She had them on a plaque in her office on the wall behind her desk, and I have never forgotten them. In fact, when I left, she gave me a plaque with those exact words on them. When she found out that I decided that I wanted to be a doctor and I was going to pursue my pre-med degree and go to medical school, she organized for me to have a small scholarship so that when I went off to university, it would cover some basic materials. And they sent me off with an amazing farewell. Then university that I had transferred to from getting my 2-year degree while I was at the Red Cross. I knew it was going to be competitive getting into medical school, and I started looking at outside the box options. Now let me tell you, my life has been all about looking outside of that box. That's tool number 1. When the door looks closed, immediately start looking for the window, because there is almost always a window. One day I was strolling across campus when I saw that there was an Australian university visiting and they were promoting their business program. I stopped by and had a little chat and asked them if they had a medical school. And they did, and it turned out that it was a post-grad program just like the schools in America. So along with all of my other applications, I threw that one in thinking, what an amazing adventure that would be. And then it all happened very quickly. I got an interview very quickly. I got accepted very quickly. And so I thought, why not? I sold everything that I owned. And at 29 years old, I shifted to Australia to study medicine. Now, when I came to Australia, I was married. We had our first child at the end of first year medicine. I didn't take any time off and got pregnant with the second child in fourth year medicine. Those years were very difficult on the marriage, and it ended when I was in early pregnancy with my second child. So I became a single parent in fourth year medicine and graduated from medical school with an infant and a toddler. I had never planned to stay in Australia. I'd always planned to go back home to America, but I decided that I would stay and get registered first here in Australia. So that meant I had to do an intern year. Again, another pivotal point in my life. The hospital that was affiliated with the medical school that I went to developed and offered a job sharing internship to myself and my best girlfriend I had met on the first day of medicine. We'd been very close throughout medical school, and she was now pregnant with her first child. So we did the very first job sharing internship that they had ever had at that hospital, and I am so proud to say that it continues on today. So those years were pretty difficult, but I got through them and I got my training. One thing led to another. Once I finished my hospital work, I decided then that it would be easier for me to get my GP credentials here and then look at going back to America. I went to a little rural town to do my GP training after I had done my obstetrics training in the hospital, because I knew that once I left the hospital, I didn't want to go back. The hospital wasn't the work environment that I enjoyed the most. So I went to a little town that I fell in love with. My mentor was absolutely amazing, solo GP for many years, and just taught me so much. I decided that I wanted to stay in Australia and raise my two little Aussies here, and I have never regretted that decision. They have had the most amazing upbringing here. Here I am, all this many years later, with two adult children who are thriving. From my journey, I've worked really hard to get where I am today. I found lots of windows when doors were closed. I've not taken no for an answer. I've not listened to the doubters and the naysayers, and let me tell you, there have been a lot. I fully believe that where there's a will, there's a way. You can imagine the imposter syndrome I've gone through, the low-level anxiety I've managed on my own with simple tools that I've gone out and found on my own. I've been on my own, fully pregnant with a toddler in a foreign country with absolutely no family support. I know hard. I plan to share lots of tools and strategies and information that I've used for myself to get where I am today and for my patients. I have no doubt these tools can also help you live your very best life. We're going to talk about what's happening to our mind and our body in midlife, and what happened when perimenopause snuck up on me and my body took a detour without my permission, when the things I had always done to manage my mind and my weight and my body weren't working like they used to. We're going to talk about how inadequate the training I had received in managing menopause was and why, what I did about it, and how I'm not alone, that there are doctors in the UK and America speaking out just like me, demanding we do better research, better education, better treatment for our patients. I'm going to share with you all the things I've learned on my own personal midlife journey that have helped me rescue myself from being a hot, flashing menopausal maniac to having better sleep, better mood, better gut function, and reversing that horrible midsection weight gain. We're going to talk about longevity and all the things we can be doing now to improve our health span. So not just living longer, but living longer better function, better quality of life. We're going to look at what life looks like in 10, 20, 30, or even more years. Planning now to be our best selves then. Reducing the risk of preventable diseases. Improving and maintaining our function. We're going to talk about all of this and so much more women's business. So I hope I've sparked your interest enough to come back. Join me here in my sunroom in a couple of weeks. Well, we'll have a cuppa and a chat We'll do the work together and we'll opt to thrive. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please hit that subscribe button and have a fantastic day. The Opt to Thrive podcast is designed for information purposes only and is not engaged in the giving of medical advice. The information provided on the podcast should not be used for diagnosing or treating a health problem or disease. In no way should the information provided by Opt to Thrive be considered medical advice, and at all times the advice of a medical professional should supersede recommendations from Opt to Thrive. If you have or suspect you may have a health problem, you should consult your healthcare provider. The views expressed in this podcast are purely that of Dr. Sims and do not in any way reflect those of the institutions she contracts with medical services to.
Thank you for listening to Opt to Thrive. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate and share the podcast. You can visit our website at www.opttothrive.com and leave a comment for any subjects you would like to hear more about.